Ladies and gentlemen, I know we're all tired, but WBAF 2019, taking the summit, is almost close to an end. We have an excellent panel, then we have a coffee break, and then we have a plenary session. The fifth panel for today in the Take the Invest Summit is about increasing the financial inclusion of migrants. Focus of this panel will be, is it possible to link migrants and host economies, and can they benefit? And whether that interaction can lead to a higher financial wealth and higher quality of life. And our distinguished group of panelists are going to give their insights and experience regarding that. Moderator, and I would like to welcome him, Professor Enrico Cecco, Dean of Economic and Social Science Faculty at the University College of Wisdom, Albania, and WBAF Senator. Dr. Hashim Hussein, Head of UNIDO, ITPO, and the board member. My dear friend from Istanbul, Ismail Haznedar, founder and chairman of Jane, and a person quite involved in all the WBAF issues. And of course, last but not least, our dear friend from Russia, Vitaly Polekin, president of Russian Business Angels Association. Vitaly, welcome.
I think this is a very interesting topic, probably contradictory thoughts several people might have about inclusion and financial support of immigrants at the host countries, because there are a lot of complications in terms of policy, economy, and social life of the hosting countries, even the countries from where the immigrants are coming. But I think I should start with some information and figures about the situation. How is the situation in the world? And I will leave the floor to the speakers to continue the discussion. Currently, as per the World Bank estimation, the total remittances around the world are about $450 billion, of which around $350 billion went to developing countries, contributing to greater economic property for the economy as a whole per year. These are figures per year. There is an increasing number of manufacturing firms run by immigrants, especially in countries like Italy, Germany, etc. In the United States, for every 100,000 immigrants, 520 became entrepreneurs in a given month, every month. Of all new entrepreneurs in 2016, around 30% were immigrants. Immigrants account for more than 40% of new businesses in California, New York, etc. Immigrants have founded 51% of the country's startups companies worth $1 billion or more in the US. Each of these companies employed an average 760 people. In the 2018 Fortune 500 list, we find 44%, or 219 companies, were founded by immigrants or their children. A full 100, or one of every 5, were founded by foreign-born individuals, while another 119 were founded by children of immigrants. An example from Turkey. Migrants from Turkey and Germany are a good example. Migration to Germany started in early 70s, last century, And in the late 90s, 50,000 Turkish migrants entrepreneurs had created 185,000 new jobs in Germany. The total amount of revenue generated by Turkish entrepreneurs in Germany is around 10 billion euro. And now an example from a small country, Albania. Migrants from Albania and Italy are a good example. Migration in Italy started in the early 90s, 91, 92. As per 2018, the total amount of revenue generated by Albanian entrepreneurs in Italy is around 3.4 billion euro. Sectors where immigrants have their businesses are construction, manufacturing, consultancy, export, import, etc. I think these are very interesting figures from which we can start our discussion. So the floor is yours, Mr. Asnadar.
First of all, I thank you very much for the opportunity and for bringing this topic to discussion due to the importance. I would like briefly to tell about what is my relevance to the topic with two perspectives. One is that I was born in Macedonia, in Tetovo, and immigrated to Turkey. So this is one side, showcasing as well as sharing my experience as someone who have lived that, let's say, challenge and opportunity, because it has two sides. And second one is that I'm living in a country that has welcomed one of the biggest immigrant or migration population from Syria, almost 3.5 million people now living in Turkey. One thing and opportunity that I believe immigrants brings to the entrepreneurship ecosystem or to the world is, as you mentioned, they are risk takers. Their mindset is very open for building something new, and especially dreaming to build their new fortune or life in the country that they are welcomed. As you emphasized, the example in the past that happened, Turkish people moving to Germany is a good example. I would like to contribute and support that with the numbers that's happening in Turkey. And also later on I may explain on our program-wise what we do specifically. So far in Turkey, we have welcomed like 3.5 million immigrants moving to Turkey for different purposes, and they have established like 10,000 businesses so far. In total, capital amount being invested around $100 million. The difference is that this is happening in last 5 years. So it's very new, but this is a good way of being included in economic system and also included in value creation part. Also would like to contribute with the sectors that they are investing. The majority invest for wholesale markets, then real estate, construction, and retailing. I see that they are very similar, likewise, like the one that you have explained, mainly due that it's easy to enter and to start, and also it gives more opportunity to fast integrate to daily life and creating jobs. To conclude my words for the first question, during this period in Turkey, you see really very nice programs running. One of them is IMECE, that is very focused on creating awareness, creating the skills about entrepreneurship, also giving opportunity for immigrants to be involved with their social entrepreneurship programs. In Girişim Hareketi, that is our program, Gain Global, we have created a training program where we give seminars as well as some workshops from idea to setting up jobs. And we have created one specific class for refugees and immigrants that come from Syria. And it was very successful that we have accomplished to have 180 participants to the program with their idea and participation. I will conclude later on. I thank you.
Dr. Hashim Hussein, what do you think about that situation?
Well, You know, my business is to help and support micro and small businesses, you know, worldwide, to help entrepreneurs to start their businesses. Today, in the region where I come from, the Arab countries, more than 50% of refugees worldwide from conflicts or crises, they're coming from the Arab region. Yes, you have the Syrian crisis, you have Iraq, you have Yemen, you know, you have countries like Sudan, Somalia, you know, all of those countries that are part of the Arab countries, and are suffering a serious problem of exodus, you know, of youth and women. I'm now working with GOSCEP, you know, here in Turkey to develop a special program which is funded by the EU to support the Syrian refugees to establish their businesses. We have developed a detailed curriculum with GOSCEP. We have trained a team from GOSCEP from our program, because I represent what's called the Arab International Center for Entrepreneurship as part of the UN, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. We are based in Bahrain. So we have been helping GOSCEP itself on what we call business counseling and mentoring. GOSCEP has been established by UNIDO more than 40 years back. We work with GOSCEP to develop the first incubation system in Turkey. It was at the Middle East University in Ankara in 1990. And as you know, it's one of the largest science and technology parks today in Turkey. And there are more than 70 science and technology parks which is run by GOSCEP. So to bring this into action, when we're talking about the immigrants, now this program, which is part of the agreement between the EU and Turkey, you know, how to support the immigrant, but we're taking it from not only from a social point of view, but we're taking it from an economic point of view. Because Syrians by nature, they're very innovative. They have an entrepreneurial ability and skills. This is through history. So now the Turkish government have been thinking about why not we make them to have a base in Turkey? Why not we let them to be part of the economy, and they will create jobs also for other Syrians. The first part of the program will be starting maybe sometime in April, this April, with a fund for about $3 million. What we will do the diligence of the idea. It is a pilot program. Next year, the program will be, it's a bigger program, I think it's about $100 million, and then it will carry on to do that. Also, there is a discussion to develop an economic zone between the borders between Turkey and Syria, and this is where to support more Syrian entrepreneurs to develop their businesses. And this is thinking about this conflict will end, it has to end, and you know, for the continuation of peace and prosperity is always through economic integration. This is a very good example what have happened in the Second World War, especially between France and Germany, you know, when they started to have the first steel company, you know, and this is till today you can see how strong alliance is happening there. Between Syria and Turkey, it's even stronger because there is a long historical and cultural ties, especially in the people living in the borders between Syria and Turkey. So I hope this is going to be a very good pilot program, which we would like to develop it in other countries. We had a very good experience in Iraq. You know, 15 years back, we started to develop entrepreneurship centers in Iraq. We developed 4 centers, and they're existing till today. It was to support the Iraqis, which they have been moving from one city to another. And then this was a program funded by the Italian government. It's to ensure that they will come back to their villages and to their cities, but they have a mean of economic empowerment. I'm just citing these 2 examples of how we will go ahead in supporting immigrants. And we believe that immigrants can play with all of this, of course, figures and data is very interesting. I would like to have also a copy of that, if you don't mind. They can be not a burden on the society. They can actually be part of the economic development of any societies they're living in. Thank you.
Thank you. Your thoughts about the situation?
Well, I think that there is a difference between brain drain and migration. So, and when it comes to the migration, well, it's not always bad for the country from which people migrate from, because there is such thing like remittance. When people who work in other countries, they send back to their families huge amounts of money. I mean that each of them sends small amounts, but overall this is quite big amounts and financial support for their local country, for their homes and families. And the influence for the country who accepts this is not always economically good, because it usually decreases salaries in the region and so on. So that's why I think that maybe migration is a little bit different thing. And for example, I studied how the migration from Russia in early 90s to Israel actually influenced Israel. And so those Russians who migrated to Israel, actually they were downgraded in jobs because, well, they actually had lower quality of jobs than they had in Soviet Union, for example. And it also decreased the level of salaries in the region. And though in maybe 5 or 7 years the level went up again, though it was not so good for the country to accept migrants, though it was not also very good for the migrants, because actually instead of doing some intellectual work, they really did some very simple things, very simple jobs. But when we are talking about brain drain, so some people who usually do some intellectual work in one country and then they migrate to the other country and they can also do some intellectual job. This is a huge problem. And I think that countries will start compete more and more for the intellectual power, creating some kind of oasis zones where entrepreneurs, intellectual workers can develop. And well, I think that Silicon Valley for many years was this thing, but this thing is over already. Because now, for example, if a Russian coder, programmer, developer goes to Silicon Valley, he can actually get maybe 2 or 3 times higher salaries, but the price of living is also much higher. So it means that he gets no benefits. So that's why I think that it's moving to some closer cities like Los Angeles, some other parts of US, yeah, and creating such kind of oases for migrants is not just support of the startup ecosystem, because when the startup becomes a scale up or just a big company, it really needs some economic development and overall support. So it's not working like this, that you just create some oasis in the country without any other and further support. So I think that in this moment, all the government should think about how to attract all these talents in the future.
Thank you. Well, we started discussion bringing some figures and discussing about them, but now I think is the time to go in a deeper level to discuss the situation based on a theoretical approach. If we speak about the factors of production all around the world, there is land, labor and capital, innovation and entrepreneurship. by my opinion, but not only by my opinion, but even by the reports, the immigrants don't belong to the three main factors of production: labor, land, and capital. But they do have innovation and entrepreneurship abilities. What do you think about this?
I totally agree on that. Because, as we mentioned prior, they bring a dream, a power to dream that is fostering the innovation capacity, but also risk-taking capability is purely entrepreneurship based. Because if you are a risk taker, then this means you are ready to try something new. But on the other side, the country that welcomes migrants has to be ready and provide the opportunities in order to really to work on these capabilities. I have took some notes, like when you bring innovation and entrepreneurship skills, usually what are the barriers that you face as a migrant? And there are 5 points or topics that come out arise. The first one is the right to set up a company or right to work. Usually when you are a migrant, you don't have that right to set up a company or to work permit. And this is really a big challenge. I'm sure in a lot of countries this needs a regulation or somehow to be worked on in order to provide that opportunity. Even though today a lot of countries are open to welcome new investment or new entrepreneurs, but it's more about capital, entrepreneurs that has capital. We see that promotion, correct? Bring 250,000 euros and it's easy and ready for you to welcome to open your company, but this is not the case with migrants. The third one is a challenge of, let's say, language and culture. Somehow there is a barrier about that we have to overcome somehow to work on that. And the fourth one is very interesting. They don't have a direct link to ecosystem, because if we talk about entrepreneurship ecosystem in the country, somehow they need to have the linkage to that entrepreneurship ecosystem and to be engaged and work together. Then the latest one is access to finance. Somehow also, if they have the opportunity for finance, it may work. It's interesting that this was also a discussion in World Humanitarian Summit 2016. I took and read the report. Later on, it came to be a policy guide for migrant entrepreneurship that was also accepted in UN General Assembly, 71st Assembly, with the collaboration of UNHCR, IOM, and UN Migrant. This is what I saw. It emphasized something very interesting. It says somehow these models should be inclusive, while when I see the examples that are running in Turkey, they are more clusters of entrepreneurship groups or trainings just for migrants. It would be really very nice somehow maybe to combine, I believe, or to have being a part of current running entrepreneurship ecosystem. Seeing that report, what we are trying to do now in Gain Global Girişim Marketi, we had separate classes. Like we had one class Arabic speaking, one English speaking, and then we had 17 Turkish speaking classes. Now we start to make networking sessions where all of them can come together and can learn from each other's experience. And this inclusiveness model to include will make it easier, I believe. This is very important to that it's in UN 2030 agenda. We say we should create more economic opportunities for all, not leaving none of people behind. So then we will be working more, I believe, on these topics, but inclusiveness will be really very important.
Yeah, you are true. Based on the 2020 agenda of the European Union, I assume there are some financial support even for immigrants. They call the small financial schemes. Yeah. Your turn, Mr. Singh.
From a UN point of view,
Yes, now they're bringing it into the SDGs, very important. Well, I have tackled the issue of refugees because they're migrants, because this is one of the real problems, facing us, we, especially experts in the UN. But if you take if I talk about migration in general and what we call, brainwash, if you want to use this term, of migrants to go. Of course, this was the history of the U.S. in general, that more than 60% of the engineers, for example, in the U.S., they come from Asia. Through the educational system, and then they provide you a green card. This has happened to me. I was studying in the U.S., and when I was finalizing my last year, I have been offered to have a green card, because of my research and so on. Yes, but they pick up on it. A few years back, during the last years of Obama, they even developed what they call a green card for entrepreneurs. Now with the political situation, yes, if you have the criteria, then you will be giving a green card. So many countries were doing it by, if you come and invest in the property, you might have the citizenship and so on. But what is interesting now, and I think this thing will countries will start open up more and more, is how you can boost creativity and how you can boost R&Ds, because if you take countries at the national level, industrialized or a developing country, there is always a requirement that you need new ideas, you need new brains and so on. But till today, the global system does not allow this, the unleashing of this potentiality of innovation, that you can go anywhere, you can develop, if there is a good ecosystem in a country, that you can go and develop your business or you develop your innovation and so on. But what I can see, or what I can foresee now with this, this is especially happening in the last 7-10 years, that more and more we talk about innovation, more and more we talk about entrepreneurship as part of this forum, this business angel trying to see what is the best for business angels to invest worldwide. So I think it will be coming that countries, as you have said, will be competing, to open up for entrepreneurs with innovation. We call them migrants. If you're using the word migration or migrant, that he will move from one country to another, or sometimes even within a country from one region to another. Yes. So I think this trend will be happening. It will be coming, that countries will open up for innovation with ideas. But of course, as you have listed on your 6 points, the challenges, So, well, this is very interesting because I'm working with the International Organizations of Free Zones, which is based in Dubai. Okay, this is a newly established organization. It's been established 5 years back, and we developed a concept called Free Zones of the Future. The Free Zones of the Future is based on innovation and entrepreneurship. Free zones traditionally, historically, was to mobilize foreign direct investment in a country, okay, whatever investment, Now what we're bringing saying, it fits quite well with this session. We're saying we should develop future free zones. The existing ones have to be transformed. The new ones have to be based on innovation and entrepreneurship. So, if I have an innovation, I can connect that free zone. I don't know. It could be here in Adana, or it could be in Moscow. I don't know. It could be in Egypt. And then I bring my innovation to the management of that free zone. They would provide me, of course, the space, all the legal setups, because it's in the free zones, the access to finance, okay, because it fits with the cluster of that free zone. So this is just to again to second what I have been saying. This will be happening. It is coming. When we have been talking about globalization and opening up and so on, and then there are trade barriers and so on. But with the new what we call it, now we call it the first digital revolution, which is, in the past we used to call it fourth industrial revolution. Now we're moving to the first digital revolution. If you look into deep in that first digital revolution, everything has to be digitalized. You know, I don't even have to travel. You know, I can do everything virtual. So I think in the coming 3-4 years, if we're going to have this session again, we will see a big difference when we talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sion. Now is time for the opinion of Mr. Vitalian.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the statement about this risk-taking thing, that in reality we deal with the situation when this effect is achieved because people who migrate, they are really risk takers, and they are people who are ready to be in unpredictable situations. So, and these are two qualities of the real entrepreneur. So, and if we make some zones too attractive, so we should be careful not to attract people who are not risk takers and who are not capable of being in unpredictable situations. So in this case, it won't boost entrepreneurship and innovations as we want to. Yeah, so I have to catch a plane and leave you earlier, guys, so sorry for this.
Thank you. Now is the time for the, as the Master Chief says, final touch, take-home message. Let's start from Mr. Hussein.
As our colleague, the panelist from Russia says, when you will migrate, it's part of risk-taking. And one of the most important skills for entrepreneurship is risk-taking, you know. But of course, here is not the risk-taking of the money itself. It is, so for me as an expert in entrepreneurship, it's different, you know. I can be a risk-taker, but when it comes to money, it will be completely different. It is completely different. But I just wanted to comment that for him, but he left. But why someone will migrate? Mainly he will migrate because he wants to have a better living. This is where I can refer it to entrepreneurship, because better opportunity, is an opportunistic, you know. So if he can find the right ecosystem, this is what we aim to do. This is why we're saying, don't look into immigrants as a very negative setup. No, look into immigrants as, but for me also, I might have an issue with that, because also migration sometimes some countries, they can be very egoistic in the brainwashing, especially what's happening in Africa. So if you're going to brainwash and we take all of those good ideas in Africa, so how these countries will be sustained? If you take a migration from the other side, that what now I've been talking from the positive side. What about the negative side? What will happen to that country, or what will happen to that community? But as a fact, it's happening, and we cannot stop that.
For me, the final points that I would like to emphasize, one is, there is a saying, when you bring two people together, you cannot imagine what will be happen, how great things may happen. So now you are bringing together two different people, therefore it will be creating a big opportunity and great opportunities. I may conclude with Mr. Hashim Hussein's point. Maybe we should talk in the future as well how we can make like a reverse migration, especially if we talk like Africa, where the population, 50% of population is younger than 20 years old, and you have a lot of unemployed. So somehow, and you have the talent there, you have the innovation capacity, you have the entrepreneurship capacity. So maybe entrepreneurship-wise we'll be focusing as well there to have something to reverse migration concept as well to work and to create value. I see the concept very positively, and I believe that it will make the world better as we are moving and working together with better opportunities and equal opportunities, hopefully. I thank you very much.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do remember when I was a little boy, about 50 years ago, my grandmother used to brown coffee and grind it in a grinder, old style Turkish coffee, yeah, with pot. And she said to me, look, when you grow up, try to put some brown coffee in a cup of hot water without grinding it. Yes, that's what I did. And what I realized is that when I put it a brown coffee, only one brown coffee seed in a cup of hot water, after some minutes, I just take off the seed from the water. The seed didn't change, but the water became brown and with a very nice flower. And I strongly believe this is what the immigrants bring to the hosting country. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.